Hello and welcome to Deep Dive Movie Reviews with my friend Steve Hackman and myself, James Marsh. On this episode, we are talking King Richard.
Hey, but before we talk about King Richard, if you haven't subscribed to Deep Dive Movie Reviews, it'd be a great favor to us. It doesn't cost you a dime just to hit that subscribe button, ding that bell so you never, ever miss a video. Also, just a reminder is Deep Dive Movie Reviews is spoiler heavy. We love to unpack every element of the film, so you have been warned. James, tell us about King Richard.
Okay, so King Richard is the story of Richard Williams, the father of tennis superstars Serena and Venus Williams, and how he got them there, essentially. Will Smith portrays Richard Williams here, and he's opposite Aunjanue Ellis as his wife, Brandy Williams, and you've got newcomers, or relative newcomers, Saniyya Sidney and Demi Singleton as Venus and Serena. The film looks at their early days as teenagers, hitting the junior circuit, trying to get sponsorship, trying to get professional coaching, and the struggles that they faced in doing so, not least because they're an African-American family from the working classes, growing up in Compton, LA, very dangerous neighborhood, but also that they were trying to break into a sport which had been historically up to that point considered a very white, a very privileged, and a very sort of high-class sport. And this is directed by relative newcomer, again, Ronaldo Marcus Green, used to be a kindergarten teacher. And I believe he only got one other film to his name, Monsters and Men. So, Steve, what do you think of this one?
James, I went into this movie kind of the way you tend to go into a biopic. You know kind of how a structure of a biopic occurs. And so I had that reference in my mind, even though you have these iconic sports superstars with Venus and Serena Williams. This movie is really aptly titled King Richard. It is solely focused on the shoulders of their father, Richard, played by Will Smith. And like any king, there are spurts in this man of genius, of ego, of narcissism, of brilliance, of tenacity and fortitude. This guy is compelling to watch. I ended up, if I'm honest, enjoying this movie more than I thought I was going to enjoy it. I thought this was going to be just a standard biopic. It's going to be rising above. There's going to be tough challenges, an African-American family, like you mentioned in the intro, trying to break into structures of which they've been denied. But I really found myself challenged myself as a person of what can I do in my life to actually better, to not take no for an answer. What I found compelling about Richard is he will not take no for an answer. He will keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And I felt compared to him, boy, I'm such a lazy sit on the couch watching Netflix kind of guy.
Right.
That's what I ended up slightly coming away from this film with, but I did see a lot of parallels. I don't know if you remember in the 1990s, there was a film made of the Jackson Five, very similar story of Joe Jackson taking his young boys and despite the odds, despite very, not poverty, but very lower
humble beginnings.
Yeah, very humble beginnings. Not willing to take no for an answer, but he had a vision of what his kids could be. And King Richard has much better production values. It's a much stronger script. This is obviously at a much higher level, but in essence, watching a father figure, he was denied so much. He was never given the respect. Will Smith is really able to convey in Richard Williams, I was never respected. I always had to fight for everything. There was never opportunities provided for me. I am going to create opportunities for my kids. My kids are going to have what I was denied. And in a way, he's living vicariously through his kids. But hey, so what? He knew what he was going to do and he did it. And this was fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what motivates a lot of parents. I'm not a parent, but I think that's what motivates a lot of them. It's like, I'm going to provide for you what I was unable to enjoy for myself. And there's a very memorable line where he sort of points out the fact that he's raising 5 girls. He's got 3 step daughters and then Venus and Serena are his own. 5 girls in Compton.
Yes.
You know, during, was it in the 90s? It's like that was tough going. That was
tough.
That was pretty hard. I mean, I've got to be honest. I approached this film with a certain degree of sort of cynicism, I might say, skepticism, not least when I saw that Venus and Serena were executive producers on the project. So you're kind of like, okay, you know, that means that sure, you get the permission and the access and all the rest of it, but at the same time, how warts and all is this going to be? Because it was my understanding, and I don't know a great deal about the family or their beginnings, but it was my understanding that Richard Williams was a little shady.
Yes.
You know, he was far from a saint. And when you see that the girls are involved in the production of the film, Will Smith is playing Richard Williams, I was like, okay, we're getting the sugar-coated, rose-tinted version.
Very
of the
soft
truth.
gloves. The very soft gloves are apart.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I kind of came into this kind of going, all right, here we go. And I've got to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised, and not least by the fact that they do allow for an element of Richard's sort of flawed personality to come through. I mean, I think they do still, you know, brush over some certain elements. Like, I think he was a bit of a, well, I don't want to slander him here,
You're
but
right.
I think there are elements of his backstory that are brushed aside, or
I kept feeling this is not a guy that I would want to hang around. This is not a fun guy to be with. And
he's intense, you know?
Yeah. And I feel the same way you do about this film, and that, like with Bohemian Rhapsody, where, you know, all of Queen were basically co-producers on that. You immediately know that there's going to, as you said, there is going to be a certain lens, and it's going to be a little rose tinted that we're going to view these events through. And just like Bohemian Rhapsody, where we're seeing some of Freddie Mercury's flaws, we're seeing some of the band's little infighting. It's very controlled. It's very measured. They allow a little release valve for the flaws, but you never feel like you're getting some of the real crap that occurred. And that's the way I felt with King Richard. Like yourself, I don't know a whole lot about the tennis world. I'm not one of these people that know all who's playing and that. So I wasn't going into it with that level of critique, but I have heard about Richard through the years. And in watching this movie, I did do a little of my due diligence research. And yeah, this guy is
bit of a chancer, you know, bit of a hustler in probably the nicer sense of the word. But, you know, he worked hard to hustle to get his daughters where they were,
and he did it. I think, you know, he did do it.
He did
so it. You know,
it's amazing that, you know, I believe it is true that what they say in the film, that, you know, he wrote this plan for his daughters before they were even born, and the plan was that they were going to become the biggest tennis players in the world, and he did it.
Which is a little psycho, though. What if they didn't want to be tennis stars?
Well,
you know,
this is a conversation.
He's like an Asian tiger mom, you know.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's like you're going to be a surgeon or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. I mean, but it's interesting that there is never that conversation.
No, in
the film, you know, they never turn around at 10, 12 years old and go, Dad, I don't really like tennis. You know, were they ever given the choice?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think in the same way that Richard is providing for his daughters what he was unable to experience, there is the temptation in a film like this for the real Richard Williams and the real Venus and real Serena Williams to tell the story the way they want the story to be heard, rather than necessarily the story that did happen.
Sure.
You know, but I think to everybody involved's credit, I think what you get, you know, is a pretty compelling story. You know, that I think Will Smith is great. Actually, I think he's really good. He's as good as he's ever been. You know, you do get behind the guy. Yes. You do kind of feel for the guy. You do sympathize with him. You know, but you, like you say, you wouldn't want to spend much time with him. He's a pretty overwhelming, intense, kind of relentless character. But also, and more importantly, I think that the young actresses who play Serena and Venus are fantastic.
Yes, very
and
much.
I noticed they had done a little bit of acting before. I think particularly Saniyya Sidney, who plays Venus. But I wonder how they cast it, whether they looked for tennis players who could act or actors who could play tennis, because sure, it's movie magic and you cut around these things, but the tennis matches themselves are incredibly compelling, and there seems to be almost like an emotional narrative to each one. The tennis matches in the film mean something in the same way that musical numbers in a musical propel the story forward, if they're done right.
Right.
And I think that the games here, tell part of the story themselves. And I thought that was where and how the film worked, because I don't care about tennis particularly. I'll sit and watch a game if there are stakes, but I don't care inherently about tennis. And the film made me care.
I think we're on the same page there. I was compelled by many of the aspects of this film, and I had to keep reminding myself, I'm not here to judge the man, and I'm not here to judge whether this is a completely accurate film. I'm reviewing the story, the acting, the actual components of the film, not making a judgment call on whether this guy made a good decision with his kids and things like that. And in that aspect, I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and at a much higher level than I would have thought. And I need to say is Aunjanue Ellis, who plays the wife and the mother of Serena and Venus. I thought some of the dialogue between her and Will Smith was some of the best dialogue in the film. Their snappy, basically he is this strong-headed man who he has a singular vision about his daughters, and sometimes he oversteps his bounds, especially when it comes to his wife, and she's no pushover. She wants to see this for her kids as well, but she wants to see things balanced, and she's not going to be disrespected in the process. And there are some great snappy responses she has with Will Smith. And then at the end, when she tells him, "Do you think I'm hanging around you because of you?" I'm here for them. My daughters.
You get the sense she's sitting on the powder keg of all the things that the movie isn't telling us about Richard Williams.
Yes, yeah. And there's a lot of between the lines thinking that I think you were thinking too, that we're not getting a whole story. And granted, it's a 2-hour film. We can't tell everything. But yeah, there's reactions she's having that at times is not justified with everything we've seen on the screen. You've got to kind of fill in the blanks that this guy is a bit of an ass who is doing some things on the side, who is doing things that has her slowly over time, because there's definitely feeling at the beginning of the movie of real love between them. And by the time the kids are older and they're going into professional tennis, and we subsequently know they've divorced in real life, their relationship is basically an accommodation.
His relationship with the girls is a little bit strained. I think as well these days.
And I made the parallel with the Jacksons, which is a very similar story, and their relationships with dad and mom. And it's a lot of similarities you can see, and each one getting their kids to the absolute pinnacle of where, Michael Jackson, maybe the brothers a little bit less so, but obviously they were huge at their time. And Michael is, the top of the top. Venus and Serena, top of the top. And they, both fathers, very similar attitudes to life. Both of them are guys I'd have little to no interest of calling a friend.
I think the one main area of the story that I felt I wanted more about was just how much of an impact it had on the sisters and their relationship and what kind of rivalry they had. I mean, because we've seen them out there in the public eye. They played doubles together, and they often ended up playing against each other in finals and semifinals and whatever. And it was for the most part always portrayed as this incredibly mutually supportive, and pretty strong, tight relationship. But them I don't believe that. Or I don't believe it was just always that way.
Right.
Particularly in the teenage years, particularly when Richard is given this sort of the ultimatum. He's like, I can get professional coaching for one of you.
Yeah, Tony Goldwyn playing Paul Cohen.
Paul Cohen, that's the name.
Only offers free coaching for one of them.
And so obviously, he chooses the older sister, and it's like, yeah, sure, fair enough, because there was no, I don't think, differentiation in quality between their skills at that age.
Right.
And what I loved is how Serena is portrayed in the film, because the film is very much about Venus. It's very much about her breaking in, and Serena is always just seen, she's the younger sister. She's just always seen as kind of chill about the whole thing, but very assertive. She goes out and signs up on her own to get into the same competitions, and just very quietly is doing really well, and obviously arguably goes on to be even better and even more successful than Venus. And I just wanted there to be more conflict in that relationship that never exists. I don't believe it never existed, and I wanted to see it.
I also wanted to see, they have 3 half sisters that are all living in the house too, and it's like there's all this attention given.
One's a lawyer, and
in real life today, like if you go, you can find out what they're doing. And it seems like they're all have a good relationship, the sisters, but there is a feeling. I kept asking myself, well, why did these 2 get to be the tennis stars? Why do they not get to play tennis? Do these other sisters feel left out? I mean, there's so much attention given to these 2. If I was one of these 3, I'd be going Cinderella,
Yeah, there's a whole other version of this movie where arguably the parents aren't even in it. Yeah. And it's just because, and especially the fact that all 5 of them share a bedroom, so just they're just on top of each other, and it's in each other's faces all day, nonstop. And very seriously, it's only focusing on 2 of them. And then when that comes to a head, it's one of them. It's like, come on, there's got to be some sibling conflict going on there.
And it's really
great. And it's great that it's resolved.
Yes.
But I want to see it.
But I think one of the things that makes this movie compelling is the degree in which they rose out of such humble background. The movie really falls over itself, reminding us, obviously they're practicing on these tennis courts in Compton that are not up to stuff. There's gang members, making very rude comments of the girls. Will Smith is having to bear it. That there's no heroics. There's no, I'm going to go drop kick these gang members. No, these gang members rule the streets, and they're going to do what they are going to do. And you just have to learn to live with it. And, I was reminded in this film how privileged I am. I've never had to worry about the gang member in my neighborhood that threatens my safety. And, we see a drive-by shooting in the film. Right. And, and then even when he takes the girls for the first time to approach Paul Cohen about possibly coaching them for free. And of course, Pete Sampras and John McEnroe are there playing tennis. And we are reminded the divide that separates the class systems in America and in the world. And through this guy's tenacity, and I think this is what people find about the whole story compelling over the years, is it really is a Cinderella story. I mean, these girls went from the very bottom all the way to the very top. And we get to go along for the ride and watch it vicariously.
That's right. And it's entirely self-made. You cannot take any of it away from any of them and go, oh yeah, well, they were given this opportunity by so-and-so and this opportunity. So it's like, so what, even if a door was opened by somebody, that should never have been closed anyway, they got where they were purely on their own hard work and hard effort, and effort. And it's great in that regard. I'm very glad that inevitably during the film, there are moments when Jon McEnroe and Pete Sampras and Jennifer Capriati, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario pop up. And I'm glad that they're kind of almost always left sort of slightly out of focus in the background.
Yes. Yeah.
And, Arantxa Sanchez is kind of in it a bit more because she, it's the first serious match that Venus plays. So she's right up there. But I was worried that it was going to get a bit kind of goofy and you'd get these weird sort of impersonations of these characters. So I was quite pleased that the film sort of quite deliberately.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's just, you could argue that it's a storytelling technique, that they're like, these characters were always just out of reach. They were just sort of out of focus. They were sort of surreal. They would never felt like they were actually really there. I might be giving the film a little bit too much credit for that,
right. Yeah, okay.
but I don't know. It's how it's there, so claim it. But the fact that the film didn't go into this sort of parade of impersonations of all of these sort of famous stars, I was kind of relieved by that.
Yeah. Well, McEnroe, he just gives us a quintessential McEnroe, whatever.
You cannot be serious.
Yeah, and then just walks off, and I'm thinking, oh, that's so McEnroe.
I think that the one other thing about their story that was so impressive was just how committed they remained to Richard's plan. Because he was it was almost, once they sort of had their big break, it was almost like he was trying to sabotage it. When he didn't want them to play juniors, he wanted them to keep their feet on the ground, he wanted them to get a proper schooling and all the rest of it, and come home, not get kind of sort of drunk on the success of it all, not get disillusioned by it. To the point where his coaches, Jon Bernthal, Rick Mackey and whatever, are saying, you have to let them play.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we've been fighting for. And he's like, no, I'm not having them in the juniors. When they can play in the proper pros, then fine. But until then, no, they're just going to stay back training or whatever. And he's like, this is madness.
Yeah. And the whole thing where he gets Jon Bernthal to agree to coach them, moves everybody to Florida, and then lets him in on the fact that, oh, they're not going to play the juniors. He's like, you could have told me this back in Compton. And he's like, oh, but we wouldn't have got to move to this lovely home.
Well, exactly. We wanted to come and live in Florida. And even when, she has that first big game against Arantxa Sanchez, and she gets the offer from Nike, and they say, no, thanks. They're like, we're going to hold out for a better offer. I mean, the balls to do that.
And when the end credit comes up and says that, a few days later, she was offered $15 million. I'm like,
crazy.
Crikey. That's just insane.
Well, this is it. It's like, it's madness. And they were right.
Yes.
And you're just like, that's nuts.
He's King Richard. He's King Richard, and there's madness in the king, and it works.
It's a good title. It's a great title, actually, because it alludes to the kind of the delusion and the self-importance and the self-confidence, but also the power that he assigned himself to wield over his children. Which is kind of, particularly sort of in this day and age, is kind of crazy, borders on the ridiculous.
Well, that whole helicopter parent, I mean, he takes it to the extreme, and obviously he was able to produce these results, but at what cost? And again, I have to remind myself, I'm not here to judge the man, I'm here to judge the movie. So that's
incredibly diplomatic of you.
I miss my calling in the civil service, foreign service.
And I just want to go back to Will Smith. I mean, I think he is great. I mean, he is undeniably the reason why the film got made the way it got made. I mean, I think the fact that the Venus and Serena wanted a movie about their lives to be made would ensure that it got made. But I think that when Will Smith came on board, I'm tongue-tying myself. It got made the way that it did, and to the quality that it did. I think he's great. I think it's arguably his best performance to date. It's right up there. He is Oscar nominated, and I believe at the time of recording, we're recording this on the 18th of February. So nominations are out, awards are still a month away. I think he's the favorite to win Best Actor at the moment. It's a strong field. He's up against Benedict Cumberbatch. He's up against Denzel Washington, Javier Bardem, Andrew Garfield for Tick, Tick, Boom.
Right.
So, he's up against two past winners in Denzel and Javier Bardem, two upcoming Brits who have both been nominated once before in Andrew Garfield and Benedict Cumberbatch. And I know that you shouldn't care about the Oscars, and B, if you do, it should be on the best performance rather than anything else. But it is politics. It is whose turn it is. There is a certain degree of,
yes, positioning and who's earned it. Whose turn is it?
Yeah, who's got the momentum?
Yeah.
And I was saying this to you earlier. Since the nominations came out, there hasn't been a lot of vocal conversation about where things are going. It still feels like a very open field in almost every category, but I think best actor seems to be all headed Will Smith's way, and I'm perfectly happy with that. If that's the way it goes, I think it's the right movie for him to win for. It's the right kind of performance at the right time in his career and all the rest of it. Whether those things make a difference or not, remains to be seen. But I would be more than happy if he strikes gold come Oscar night.
We'll have to wait and see if your prediction comes to pass.
And then obviously, we can't go without saying that, the film is nominated in 6 categories, I believe. And I think the other one where it stands a chance of winning anything is Best Song, solely because it's Beyonce. And I think that there are plenty of people who just want to give an Oscar to Beyonce.
Yeah.
And it's quite a star-studded lineup this year in the Best Song category. I know Billie Eilish, obviously, for the James Bond theme is in there.
Yeah.
And there's a few other. Lin-Manuel Miranda is another one. I think he would get the EGOT if he wins. But I think so don't dismiss Beyonce. I can't recall the song off the top of my head. I don't know.
No, I can't. Good. I can't remember it. To be honest, I can't even associate a song with it at this point. I can't think of the song. Yeah. But it's or even when it comes in the movie, maybe just over the end credits or whatever. But when it comes ballot time, people are going to look down there and go, "Oh, Beyonce! I like Beyonce. Let's give her an Oscar." And that's sadly, it's kind of like that sometimes. So, unfortunately, but sad but true. So, James, what are we going to score this out of today? What are we looking at?
Oh, well, it has to be Grand Slam victories,
yes,
Grand Slam trophies, Wimbledon titles, name it.
Let's just say Grand Slam victories. How many Grand Slam victories are you going to give King Richard?
I'm going to give it. It might. I mean, I've been quite positive about the movie, and it might seem like I'm suddenly like backtracking somewhat. And I really like the movie a lot more than I thought I was. I think Will Smith in particular is very good, as are the 2 young girls. That said, I feel that it's not the whole story. I feel that it is a somewhat sort of rose-tinted version of events, but that's absolutely fine. If you get the chance to make a movie about me, I'm not going to tell you everything. I'm going to leave out certain things, but I'm going to give it a rock solid 3.5 Grand Slam titles out of 5.
Now, we should write these down beforehand, because now I feel like I'm copying you, because I have exactly that I'm thinking I was going to do 3, and I thought, no, I enjoy this movie more than a 3, but not quite a 4. So I'm going to give it 3.5 for almost every exact reason you gave just a few moments ago. Solid movie. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I'm not a tennis lover per se, but I was compelled by the tennis in this film. The acting was solid. I agree with you that if Will Smith goes home with the gold, it's well deserved, and it very well could happen. And so yes, 3.5. I would recommend go see King Richard.
Excellent. So thanks a lot for watching this episode. Please remember to subscribe, like the video, ding the bell.
Hey, and if you're interested, both James and I are on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram. You'll find the links in the descriptions below, as well as audio links to the podcast where you can get this episode, as well as many other episodes of Deep Dive Movie Reviews in podcast form. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and most of the major platforms.
All right, then. Well, until next episode, goodbye.
Bye, everybody.